There are songs that make people happy. There are songs that make people cry. And then there are songs that make people remember things they never lived. In the winter of 1897, an aging composer named Lucian Wehr arrived in Vienna carrying a leather case that had not been opened in nearly 100 years. Nobody knew what was inside. Nobody knew where he had come from. And nobody knew why the most celebrated musicians in Europe seemed to fear him. Lucian looked like a man who had lived too long. His hair was silver. His face was thin. His eyes were dark and strangely youthful. He walked with a black cane and wore an old-fashioned velvet coat that belonged to another century. But the strangest thing about Lucian Wehr was not his appearance. It was his music. For nearly 200 years, composers had whispered about him. A mysterious musician who appeared in different cities under different names. A composer whose pieces were impossibly beautiful. A composer who never seemed to grow older. Some said he had sold his soul. Others claimed he had discovered a secret hidden inside music itself. But nobody knew the truth. Lucian Wehr was a vampire, and he had never survived on blood alone. He fed on something much more precious. Human emotion, love, grief, longing, joy, fear, every powerful feeling a human being carried inside their heart. And whenever Lucian composed a masterpiece, he took some of it, a little memory, a little happiness, a forgotten face, a childhood summer, the feeling of being loved, the sound of a mother's voice, tiny pieces of the soul. His victims rarely noticed. They simply felt different, a little emptier. And Lucian became stronger. But in 1897, he was tired. Very tired. For the first time in centuries, the endless night had begun to feel like a prison. He wanted to create one final masterpiece, one final opera, and he had already chosen its name. The Blood Opera. The first person to hear about it was a young violinist named Clara Moreau. Clara was 23. She had arrived in Vienna with almost no money, a battered violin, and a dream of performing in the city's greatest concert halls. One evening, while playing outside a crowded theater, she noticed an old man standing across the street. He was watching her. He didn't clap, he didn't smile. He simply listened. When Clara finished, the man crossed the street. "You play beautifully." Clara lowered her violin. "Thank you." "You play with pain." She frowned. "I don't know what that means." Lucian smiled. "You will." He handed her a black card. There was no address, only a name. Lucian Wehr. Clara stared at it. "You are the composer." "I used to be. Everyone says you've disappeared. People often say things about men they cannot understand." She looked at the card. "Why did you give this to me?" "Because I need a violinist." "For what?" Lucian's eyes seemed to darken. "My final opera." Clara laughed nervously. "You've written a new opera?" "Not yet." "Then what is it called?" Lucian looked at her. "The Blood Opera." Something about the name made Clara uncomfortable, but she couldn't explain why. Lucian turned away. "Come tomorrow night." "Where?" He gave her an address, an abandoned theater at the edge of Vienna. "Bring your violin." Then he walked away. Clara watched him disappear into the fog. She should have ignored the invitation. She knew that. Yet the next evening, she went. The theater had been abandoned for decades. Its windows were broken. Its red curtains were covered in dust. But when Clara entered, hundreds of candles were burning. A grand piano stood beneath the stage lights, and Lucian sat before it, waiting. "You came?" Clara nodded. "I almost didn't." Lucian smiled. "Almost is enough." He opened a sheet of music. The pages were completely black. No notes, no words. Nothing. Clara stared. Is this the opera? Not yet. Then what am I looking at? The beginning. Lucian placed his fingers on the piano. The first note sounded. Clara felt it immediately. Something moved through her chest. The second note followed, then the third. The melody was unlike anything she had ever heard. It sounded ancient, beautiful, terrifying. Clara closed her eyes. Suddenly she was a child again. She was standing in a field behind her family's house. Her mother was singing. Her father was laughing. The summer sun was warm. Clara could smell flowers. She could hear her younger brother running through the grass. She had forgotten that day. Forgotten completely. Yet now, she remembered every detail. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Lucian continued playing. The melody changed. The field disappeared. Clara saw herself years later. Her mother dying. Her brother leaving. Her father sitting alone at the kitchen table. Every heartbreak she had buried came rushing back. Then came something else. A memory she had never known existed. A woman standing beside Lucian. Beautiful, pale, wearing a red dress. The woman whispered, "Lucian." Clara opened her eyes. The piano had stopped. Lucian was staring at her. "You saw her?" Clara could barely breathe. Who was that woman? Lucien closed the sheet music. Someone I loved. Where is she? Dead. When? Lucian looked toward the dark stage. 200 years ago. Clara felt a chill. Why did you show me her? I didn't. Clara stared. Then how did I see her? Lucien's eyes became almost black. Because music remembers. He stood. Come back tomorrow. Clara didn't move. What happens tomorrow? We begin the opera. She looked at the black pages. Why me? Lucien smiled. Because you still have something I need. What? He stepped closer. Your heart? Clara froze. For one brief moment, his face changed. His skin seemed paler. His teeth looked sharper. And she saw something ancient behind his eyes. Something hungry. Then it was gone. Lucien stepped away. Good night, Clara. She hurried toward the exit, but before she reached the door, she heard the piano again. One note, then another. She turned. Lucien was still sitting at the piano, but he wasn't playing the notes. He was writing them on the black pages. Clara stared. White musical symbols were appearing by themselves, and beneath the notes, words slowly formed. Kwon. The girl who remembers. Clara stepped backward. Her hand went to her chest. Something was missing. She didn't know what. She only knew that when she tried to remember her mother's face, she could no longer see it clearly. Outside, the bells of Vienna began striking midnight. Inside the abandoned theater, Lucien Wehr smiled. For the first time in many years, he could feel himself becoming hungry. Not for blood, for memory, for love, for the beautiful little pieces of Clara's soul. And as the first act of his final opera began to write itself, Lucien whispered into the darkness. At last, the candles went out, and somewhere behind the stage, something answered him. A woman's voice, the same woman Clara had seen in her memory. Lucien? He turned. His smile disappeared. Because the woman was not dead anymore. She was standing in the shadows, and she was holding a knife. The knife was pointed directly at Lucien's heart. He did not move. The woman stood beneath the broken archway behind the stage, her red dress untouched by dust, her pale face illuminated by the last candle. Clara stared at her. She knew that face. She had seen it inside the music. The woman from the memory. The woman Lucien had called dead. Who are you? Clara whispered. The woman looked at her, then at Lucien. I am the reason he is still alive. Lucien's expression hardened. Leave. The woman smiled. You said that 200 years ago. Lucian slowly stood. You're supposed to be dead. So are you. The words hung in the theater. Clara stepped backward. Lucian looked at her. Go home. No. His eyes narrowed. Clara, you told me to come here. I didn't know she would be here. The woman laughed softly. You never know what the dead remember. Lucian turned toward her. What do you want? She lowered the knife. The same thing I wanted when you murdered me. Clara gasped. Lucian's face became expressionless. I never murdered you. You drained me. I loved you. You consumed me. Silence. Clara looked between them. What happened? The woman stepped closer. My name was Eleanor. She looked at Lucian. He found me in Venice in 1694. Lucian said nothing. I was a singer. Her eyes moved toward the stage. I had a voice that could make people cry. Lucian smiled bitterly. And I was already a monster. Eleanor continued. He promised me immortality. Clara whispered, Did you become a vampire? Eleanor nodded, but Lucian didn't tell me the price. She looked at Clara. Blood keeps them alive. Emotion makes them powerful. Memories make them immortal. Clara felt a chill. What did he take from you? Eleanor looked at Lucian. Everything. Lucian finally spoke. I never meant to. You always say that. He lowered his eyes. I was hungry. You were obsessed. Eleanor stepped toward him, and you became more powerful every time I loved you. Clara understood. The music, Elena nodded. His music is how he feeds. Lucian looked at Clara. Don't listen to her. You told me music remembers. It does. You knew it would make me remember my mother. Lucian said nothing. And you knew it would take that memory away. Still nothing. Clara's eyes filled with tears. My mother's face. She touched her forehead. I can't remember her face. Elena looked at Lucian. Now you understand. Lucian's expression softened. Clara. She stepped away from him. What did you take? Only a memory. Only? Lucian looked ashamed. I needed it. For the opera? He nodded. Why? Lucian walked toward the piano. Because I am dying. Clara stared. You can't die. I can. He touched his chest. My heart stopped beating almost 2 centuries ago. Then why are you alive? Because I have been feeding. He looked at the black sheet music. Every masterpiece has kept me alive. Eleanor whispered, and this one will make him immortal. Lucian closed his eyes. The blood opera will be my final work. And your greatest. Yes, Clara stared at him. What happens when it is performed? Lucian didn't answer. Elena did. Everyone who hears it will become part of him. Clara looked toward the empty theater. How many? Everyone in the city. Lucian finally looked at Clara. Not everyone. She frowned. Then who? You. Clara froze. Lucian stepped closer. I didn't choose you because you were talented. Then why? Because your emotions are unusually strong. He looked almost sorrowful. You remember everything. Clara shook her head. Not anymore. Exactly. Eleanor stepped between them. Run. Lucian's eyes turned black. Don't. Eleanor raised the knife. You've already taken enough. Lucian moved, too fast for Clara to see. One moment he stood beside the piano. The next, Eleanor was against the wall. The knife fell. Clara screamed. Lucian stopped. He looked at Elena, then at Clara. Something in Clara's face changed him. He released Elena. She dropped to the floor. Go, Lucian whispered. Clara didn't move. Why? Because I don't want to hurt you. You already did. He looked away. Yes. Clara ran. She burst through the theater doors and into the cold Vienna night. Behind her, She heard Lucienne shout her name, but she didn't stop. She ran until the theater disappeared behind the fog. Then she stopped beneath a street lamp. Her breathing was ragged. She tried to remember her mother's face. Nothing. Only a blur. Then she remembered something else. Lucienne's melody. The first 3 notes. They were still inside her head. And suddenly, someone began humming them behind her. Clara turned. A little girl stood in the street, perhaps 8 years old. She was wearing an old white dress. Her face was pale. "Do you know that song?" Clara asked. The girl nodded. "My grandmother used to sing it." "Where is your grandmother?" The girl pointed toward the abandoned theater. "She went inside." Clara stared. "Tonight?" The girl nodded. "She said the composer was going to make everyone happy." Clara felt cold. "What's your grandmother's name?" The girl smiled. "Elena." Clara's blood ran cold. She turned toward the theater. The building was completely dark. Then a single window illuminated. A shadow appeared behind the glass. Lucian. He was standing at the piano, and beside him, Elena. But Elena was holding the knife again. Clara watched as the woman raised it. Then she saw Lucienne smile. Not at Elena, at the window, at Clara. He knew she was watching. The little girl beside Clara whispered, "He's starting." Suddenly every window in the theater lit up. Music filled the street. No orchestra, no singers, just one piano. But Clara heard something else beneath the melody. Thousands of voices, whispering, crying, laughing, remembering. The entire city seemed to breathe with the music. Clara covered her ears. It didn't help. The sound was inside her. Then she remembered her mother. Not her face. Her voice. A single sentence. Something her mother had told her when she was a child. Never give your heart to a song you cannot escape. Clara's eyes widened. She understood. Her mother had known. Somehow, her mother had known about Lucienne, and the memory Lucienne had stolen wasn't random. It was a warning. Clara looked at the theater. The blood opera had already begun. And if Elena was telling the truth, Lucian wasn't writing music anymore. He was writing a spell made from stolen memories, a spell that would feed on an entire city. Clara turned to the little girl. "Where is your mother?" The girl pointed toward the theater. "Inside." Clara looked at the glowing windows. Then she picked up her violin case. She had spent her entire life dreaming of performing on a great stage. Now she understood why Lucian had chosen her. He didn't need her to perform his opera. He needed her to finish it. Clara opened the violin case. Inside was her violin, and beneath it, a sheet of music she had never seen before. The page was covered in blood-red ink. At the top were 4 words. The final voice. Clara. She stared at the page. Then she heard Lucian's voice coming from the theater. "Come back, Clara." His voice was soft, almost loving. "You already belong to the music." Clara slowly lifted her violin. No. She looked toward the theater. Not yet. And for the first time that night, she smiled, because she had finally remembered something Lucian had forgotten. A vampire could steal a memory. A vampire could steal a feeling. A vampire could even steal love. But there was one thing he could never take without permission: a person's choice. Clara walked back toward the theater. This time, she wasn't running toward Lucian. She was going back to destroy his opera. And somewhere inside the darkness, Elena smiled, because this was exactly what she had been waiting 200 years to see. Clara walked back toward the abandoned theater. Every step felt heavier than the last. The music was still playing, one piano, one melody. Yet Vienna seemed to be listening. Windows opened across the street. People stepped onto balconies. Carriages stopped. Even the horses became still. Everyone was hearing the same song, and everyone was remembering something. Clara reached the theater doors. They opened before she touched them. Inside, hundreds of candles burned. The dusty seats were no longer empty. People filled them. Men in expensive coats, women wearing evening dresses, old musicians, young students, strangers who had apparently come from every corner of Vienna. None of them spoke. None of them moved. They simply stared toward the stage. At the center sat Lucien Vert. His fingers moved across the piano. Beside him stood Elena. Her red dress seemed brighter than before. She looked directly at Clara. Then she shook her head. Not yet. Clara understood. She quietly moved toward the backstage corridor, but Lucien stopped playing. The theater became silent. Clara. Every person in the audience turned toward her. She froze. Lucien looked at her. I knew you would return. Clara held her violin case tightly. You knew. I wrote the ending before you arrived. He smiled. You were always going to come back. Clara looked around. What have you done to these people? Lucien glanced toward the audience. Nothing. A woman in the front row suddenly began crying. A man beside her laughed. An elderly gentleman whispered the name of someone long dead. Lucien continued. I merely reminded them of what they lost. Clara looked at him and took it. Lucien's smile disappeared. Everything has a price. You call this music? I call it survival. He stood. For the first time, Clara noticed how tired he looked. His shoulders were bent, his hands trembled. His face seemed older than it had the night before. Lucien walked toward her. I have lived for 300 years. I have watched everyone I loved disappear. I have watched cities burn, kingdoms collapse, children grow old. And every century, I have continued. He touched his chest. Do you know what immortality feels like? Clara shook her head. Like being buried alive. Lucien looked toward Elena. She was the last person I loved. Elena's expression remained cold. I destroyed her. Lucien's voice cracked. I thought if I kept her memories inside my music, I could keep her alive. Elena whispered, You didn't keep me alive. You kept yourself alive. Lucien closed his eyes. Yes. Clara looked at the black sheet music. And now you want to use everyone in this theater. Not everyone. His eyes returned to Clara. Only their strongest memories. Why? Because the final act requires something I cannot create. What? Love. The word echoed through the theater. Clara felt the room grow colder. Lucien continued. Blood can sustain a vampire. Emotion can strengthen one. But true love, he looked at Elena, can make one eternal. Elena's eyes filled with sadness. That's why he needs you. Clara understood. You want me to love you. Lucien didn't answer. You want to feed on it. Still silence. Clara laughed bitterly. You really think I could love a monster? Lucien looked at her. I don't need you to love me. He pointed toward the audience. I need you to love someone. Clara's expression changed. Lucien raised his hand. The music began again. The audience suddenly disappeared. Clara found herself standing in her childhood home. The old kitchen, the wooden table, the faded curtains, her mother's voice. Clara. She turned. Her mother stood beside the window. Alive, young, smiling. Clara's heart broke. Mum? Her mother opened her arms. Clara ran toward her, then stopped. Something was wrong. Her mother's eyes were empty. The smile was perfect. Too perfect. Clara stepped backward. This isn't real. Her mother tilted her head. Of course it is. You died. No. Clara shook her head. You died when I was 16. Her mother smiled. You remember. Clara began crying. Yes. And you miss me. Yes. Then stay. Clara stared. The room became warmer. The smell of fresh bread filled the kitchen. She could hear her father's voice, her brother laughing. Everything she had lost was suddenly around her. Her mother reached for her. You don't have to leave again. Clara nearly took her hand. Then she remembered the warning. Never give your heart to a song you cannot escape. Clara closed her eyes. This isn't my mother. The illusion cracked. Her mother's face changed. The smile disappeared. The room turned black, and Lucian's voice echoed. Why won't you accept the gift? Clara opened her eyes. She was back inside the theater. Lucian stood before her. You could have stayed. Clara wiped away her tears. You stole that memory. No, you changed it. I showed you what you wanted. No, Clara looked at him. You showed me what you wanted me to want. Lucian stared. For the first time, he looked afraid. Elena smiled. She understands. Lucian turned toward her. Be silent. No. Elena stepped forward. You've spent centuries stealing love because you were terrified of losing it. Lucian's face twisted with anger. I said be silent. Elena raised her knife. You can't destroy what you refuse to understand. Lucian moved toward her, but Clara lifted her violin. The room changed. A single note escaped the strings. Lucian stopped. His face went pale. Where did you learn that? Clara looked at the sheet music. I didn't. She played another note, then another. The melody was completely different from Lucien's opera. It was simple, soft, human. The audience began waking. People looked around in confusion. The spell was breaking. Lucian staggered. No. Clara continued playing. The memories he had stolen began leaving his body. A woman's wedding, a child's birthday, a soldier remembering his home, a father remembering his daughter's voice. Thousands of memories poured from Lucian like light. He screamed, "Stop!" Clara kept playing. Elena joined her. She began singing. Her voice filled the theater. Lucian fell to his knees. The candles went out one by one. The black pages of the opera began burning. Lucien screamed as the music consumed his masterpiece. No! He reached for the pages. Elena stepped between him and the fire. You've had 300 years. Lucien stared at her. Please. It was the first time Clara had heard him beg. Elena lowered her knife. Do you remember my last night? Lucien looked at her. Yes. What did you promise me? His eyes filled with tears. I promised I would never let you die. And what did you do? Lucien whispered. I made you immortal. Elena shook her head. No. She touched his face. You made me lonely. Lucien closed his eyes. Then the theater shook. A massive crack appeared across the ceiling. The blood opera was collapsing. The stolen memories flew through the air. Thousands of fragments. Thousands of lives. Clara kept playing. Elena kept singing. And Lucian remained beneath the burning pages. Suddenly he looked at Clara. Finish it. She stopped. What? Lucian pointed toward the final page. It had survived the fire. Finish the opera. Clara stared at him. Why? Because I cannot. Why would I help you? Lucian smiled sadly. Because the final note isn't mine. He looked toward Elena. It belongs to her. Elena's eyes widened. Clara understood. Lucian had spent centuries believing the final masterpiece required stolen love. But the truth was different. The final song required love freely given, not consumed, not stolen, not forced, given. Clara lowered her violin. Then sing. Elena looked at Lucian. For you? Lucian shook his head. For yourself. Elena slowly stepped onto the stage. The theater became silent. She opened her mouth and sang. Her voice was soft, beautiful, human. For the first time in 300 years, Lucian did not feed. He simply listened. Tears ran down his face. The final page began filling with music. Not blood-red ink, not black symbols. Golden notes. Clara joined Elena. Then the audience began humming. One voice, then 10, then hundreds. The entire theater became a single song. Lucian smiled, and something inside him finally broke. The darkness left his eyes. His fangs disappeared. His pale skin became warm. For one brief moment, he looked human. He looked young. He looked peaceful. He looked at Elena. I'm sorry. She nodded. I know. Then Lucian Vere disappeared into the music. Not burned, not destroyed. Simply released. The candles went out. The theater became silent. Clara lowered her violin. Elena stood alone on the stage. The blood opera was finished, but nobody in the audience remembered hearing it. They remembered only one thing: the feeling of being loved. And as morning light entered through the broken windows, Clara looked at the final page. There was only one sentence written there. The most beautiful music is the music that leaves your soul yours. Elena smiled. Then she turned toward the morning. Sunlight touched her face. For the first time in 200 years, she did not fear it. But beneath the theater, something moved. A single heartbeat. Slow, ancient, alive. Clara looked down. Elena's smile disappeared, because they both heard it. Thump, then again. Thump from beneath the stage, and from the darkness below came Lucian's voice. Not angry, not frightened, almost amused. The opera was only the beginning. The heartbeat came again. Thump! The entire theater trembled. Clara stood frozen beside the stage. Elena stared at the floor. Neither woman spoke. Then, thump! A crack appeared between the wooden boards. Dust fell from the ceiling. The audience began screaming. "Everyone out!" Clara shouted. People rushed toward the doors. Some stumbled. Some couldn't remember why they were there. Others stood completely still, staring at the stage as though they were listening to something only they could hear. Elena grabbed Clara's arm. "We have to go." "Not yet." "What?" Clara pointed downward. The heartbeat. Elena's face became pale. "I know. You've heard it before." Elena nodded. 200 years ago. Another heartbeat shook the theater. Thump. Elena whispered. It was beneath Lucien's first theater. Clara stared at her. "What is it?" Elena looked toward the floor. "The thing that made him." A silence fell between them. Clara slowly understood. Lucien wasn't the first vampire. No. Then what was he? Elena's eyes filled with fear. "A servant." The floor exploded. Wood and stone flew into the air. A staircase appeared beneath the stage. It descended into darkness. Cold air rushed upward, and with it came the smell of roses. Clara looked at Elena. "Roses," Elena nodded. "He always used roses." "Why?" "Because the creature beneath the theater couldn't smell blood." She looked into the darkness. It could only smell emotion. Clara's grip tightened around her violin. "Then we're going down." Elena stared at her. "Absolutely not." Lucian said the opera was only the beginning. Lucian was a liar. He was also afraid. Elena went silent. That was true. For the first time in 300 years, Lucian had been afraid of something. Clara picked up the final page of the opera. The golden notes were still glowing. "We need to know what he was afraid of." Elena sighed. "Then stay close." They descended. The staircase seemed impossibly long. The farther they went, the colder it became. The sound of Vienna disappeared. Soon there was only darkness and the heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. At the bottom stood a massive iron door. It had no handle, no lock, only a symbol carved into its surface. A human heart surrounded by musical notes. Clara touched it. The door opened. Beyond it was a chamber larger than the theater above. Hundreds of candles burned along the walls. Ancient musical instruments hung from the ceiling. Violins, cellos, flutes, harps, all covered in dust. At the center of the chamber stood a stone coffin, and around it were thousands of glass bottles. Each bottle contained something glowing. Clara approached one. Inside was a tiny scene, a woman laughing, a child running, a man kissing someone goodbye, a wedding, a funeral, a birthday, memories. Elena whispered, "Lucian's collection." Clara stared. He kept them? For centuries. Why? Because he couldn't consume all of them. Clara looked at the bottles. Then these people, they are still inside. A faint voice came from one of the bottles. "Help me." Clara stepped backward. Another voice whispered, "Please." Then another. "Where am I?" Thousands of voices began crying from inside the glass. Clara looked at Elena. "We have to free them." Elena shook her head. "We don't know what will happen. They've been trapped for centuries." "I know." "Then we free them." Elena looked at the bottles, then nodded. Together they began opening them. The first bottle shattered. A golden light flew into the air. A young woman's laughter filled the chamber. Then another bottle. A man's memory of his wedding. Another. A child's first day of school. Another. A soldier returning home. The chamber filled with light. Thousands of stolen memories returned to the world, but the heartbeat grew louder. Thump! Thump! The stone coffin began moving. Clara stopped. "Elena, I see it." A crack appeared across the coffin, then another. Something inside breathed. Elena grabbed Clara. "Run!" The coffin exploded. A figure rose from the stone. It looked like a woman. Beautiful, pale, long black hair, but her eyes were completely white. She wore a dress made from darkness. Clara couldn't move. The creature looked at her, then smiled. "You have his music." Clara swallowed. "Who are you?" The creature stepped forward. "I am the one who taught Lucian to sing." Elena raised her knife. "You." The creature looked at Elena. "You survived." "Because he failed." "No." The creature smiled. "Because he loved you." Elena froze. The creature turned toward Clara. That was his greatest weakness. Clara held the final page tightly. "You made him a vampire." "I gave him eternity." "Why?" "Because humans fear death." The creature walked among the bottles. "But they fear something more." "What?" "Being forgotten." Clara understood. The creature had discovered the perfect food, not blood. Memory. It fed on the fear of being forgotten. It had taught Lucian how to harvest emotions through music. Every masterpiece became a feeding ritual. Every audience became a source. And Lucian had spent centuries gathering memories for it. Clara looked at the creature. Why did he create the blood opera? Because he finally wanted freedom. Elena whispered. "He tried to destroy you." The creature smiled. "He tried. Then why didn't you stop him?" "Because I needed him to create the final song." Clara's blood ran cold. "The blood opera." "Yes. But the opera was destroyed." "No." The creature looked toward Clara's hands. "The opera was never the pages." Clara looked down. The golden notes on the final page were moving. "They were you." The creature smiled. "You played it." Clara froze. "You performed the final song?" "Yes." and everyone who heard it has already given me what I need. Clara looked toward the staircase. The people above, the audience, Vienna. Her face went pale. What did you do? The creature laughed. Nothing. You used my music. I used your heart. Elena stepped forward. Stop. The creature turned toward her. You still think love can save you? Elena raised her knife. I know it can. She attacked. The creature moved faster. Elena was thrown across the chamber. Elena! Clara ran toward her. The creature approached. You cannot fight me with music. Clara looked at the violin in her hand. Maybe not. She looked at the bottles, then at the golden page, then at the ancient instruments hanging from the walls. An idea formed. You're wrong. The creature stopped. About what? Music doesn't belong to you. Clara lifted the violin. It belongs to whoever plays it. The creature's smile disappeared. Clara began playing, one note, then another. It wasn't Lucien's melody. It wasn't the blood opera. It was the song her mother had sung when Clara was a child. A simple melody. Warm, human. The creature screamed. Every bottle in the chamber began glowing. The stolen memories burst free. The creature staggered. No! Clara continued. The chamber filled with voices. Thousands of people remembering. Thousands of hearts waking. The creature became weaker. Elena rose. Keep playing! Clara played louder. The creature screamed as memories struck it like lightning. A mother's love, a father's grief, a soldier's hope, a lover's promise. Every emotion it had stolen returned to its rightful owner. The creature began cracking. Darkness poured from its body. But then it smiled. You don't understand. Clara stopped. The creature looked at her. I was never inside the bottles. Clara's eyes widened. Then where? The creature pointed upward, inside the audience. Clara suddenly understood. The people upstairs weren't merely victims. They were vessels. The creature had planted pieces of itself inside every listener, and now those pieces were awakening. Above them, hundreds of voices began singing. The blood opera. The theater shook. Elena looked horrified. It's spreading! Clara stared upward. How do we stop it? The creature smiled. You don't. Then every candle in the chamber went out. Darkness swallowed them. And from somewhere above, 1,000 people began singing in perfect harmony. The same melody, the same words, the final verse of the blood opera. Clara slowly lowered her violin, because among those voices, she heard one she knew, Lucien. But he wasn't singing to them. He was singing directly to her. Clara. His voice echoed through the theater. Finish what I started. The creature smiled, and the heartbeat beneath them became deafening. Thump, thump, thump. Then the entire city of Vienna began singing. Vienna was singing, not in theaters, not in churches, not in concert halls, everywhere. Thousands of people stood in the streets, on balconies, inside homes, beneath bridges, singing the same impossible melody. The blood opera. Clara could hear it beneath the floor. She could hear it in the walls. She could hear it inside her own heart. The creature stood before her, smiling. You cannot stop what has already begun. Elena looked toward the staircase. Clara. I know. The singing grew louder. The heartbeat beneath the chamber became enormous. Thump, the bottles shattered. Thump, the walls cracked. Thump! And then the creature spoke. Listen. Clara closed her eyes. The voices of Vienna became clearer. Thousands of people were singing, but underneath them was something else. Individual memories. A mother calling her child's name. A man remembering his wedding. A woman remembering her first kiss. A soldier remembering his home. The creature had connected them all. It was feeding. Every emotion made it stronger. Every memory made it more solid. Every moment of love gave it another heartbeat. Clara opened her eyes. "You're not feeding on their memories." The creature smiled. "Of course I am." "No." Clara looked toward the ceiling. "You're feeding on their belief that those memories belong to you." The creature stopped smiling. Clara understood the weakness. The creature couldn't steal memories. It could only convince people that their memories were no longer theirs. The moment they claimed them, the creature lost its power. Eleanor understood too. "Then we don't destroy the music." Clara nodded. "We change what it means." She raised her violin. The creature screamed. "No!" Clara played one note. The blood opera continued above them, but Clara's note was different. A single human sound, warm, uncomplicated. Then she played another. Elena began singing, not Lucian's melody, her own, a song from Venice, the song she had sung before she ever met Lucian, the song she had sung when she was young, the song that belonged only to her. The creature staggered. "What are you doing?" Elena smiled. "Remembering." Clara continued playing. Then something extraordinary happened. One voice in Vienna stopped singing the blood opera. A woman on a balcony whispered, "My mother's name was Anna." Another voice stopped. "I remember my father's hands." Another, "I remember my wedding." Another, "I remember my brother." Across Vienna, people began speaking their memories aloud. The blood opera weakened. The creature screamed. "No!" Clara played louder. The people remembered, not the memories the creature had given them, their own, their lives, their loves, their losses, their names, their choices. The creature began to crack. Darkness poured from its body. It reached toward Clara. "You cannot defeat me." Clara stared at it. "I don't have to." The creature froze. Clara pointed toward the ceiling. "They already did." Thousands of voices rose above them, not singing, remembering. The creature began collapsing. Its beautiful face became twisted. Its body broke into black smoke. For the first time in centuries, it looked afraid. "No." Elena stepped toward it. "You made him believe immortality was the same as living." The creature turned toward her. "And what do you know about living?" Elena smiled. "Enough to choose death." She walked into the darkness. The creature screamed. Elena embraced it. For a moment, the chamber became completely silent. Then, a brilliant white light exploded through the theater. The creature disappeared. The heartbeat stopped. Silence. Clara stood motionless. Then she heard something behind her. A familiar voice. "Well done." She turned. Lucien stood beside the piano, but he looked different. No pale skin, no black eyes, no fangs, no ancient hunger. He looked like an ordinary man, an old man, tired, peaceful. Clara stared. "You're alive," Lucien smiled. "For the moment." She lowered her violin. "How?" "When the creature died, its hold over me ended." He looked toward the empty space where Elena had disappeared. "She freed me." Clara looked around. "And Elena?" Lucien's smile faded. "She was never meant to stay." A soft melody drifted through the chamber. Elena's song. Lucien closed his eyes. "I loved her." Clara nodded. "I know. I spent 200 years trying to keep her. And lost her anyway." Lucien opened his eyes. "Yes." He looked at the bottles. "That's what love taught me." "What?" "Love isn't possession." He looked at Clara. "It's allowing someone to leave." Clara felt tears in her eyes. Lucien walked toward the piano. The final page of the blood opera lay on top of it. He picked it up. The golden notes were fading. The opera is finished. Clara looked at him. Is it? Lucien smiled. No. He handed her the page. You finished it. She stared at the music. What should I do with it? Nothing. Nothing? Let it disappear. Clara looked confused. Why? Because not every beautiful thing needs to be preserved. He walked toward the staircase. Some things are beautiful because they happen once. Clara followed. What will happen to you? Lucien looked toward the approaching sunlight. I think... He smiled. 24. I will finally become what I should have been 300 years ago. What? Human. They reached the theater entrance. Morning light poured through the broken doors. Lucien stopped her. For 300 years he had feared sunlight. Now he stepped into it. Nothing happened. He looked at his hands. Warm, alive. His eyes filled with tears. He laughed. A real laugh. Then he looked at Clara. Thank you, she smiled. For what? For giving me one final song. Lucien walked into the sunlight. His body did not burn. He did not turn to ash. He simply became older. The years he had stolen seemed to return all at once. His hair became completely white. His face became lined. His shoulders bent. But he smiled. For the first time, he looked his true age. Then he closed his eyes and peacefully died. Clara stood beside him. The theater was silent. Above them, Vienna had stopped singing. People were waking from the spell. They remembered their families, their friends, their lives. But they didn't remember Lucien Vera. The composer disappeared from history almost immediately. His name vanished from newspapers. His compositions became impossible to find. Every copy of the Blood Opera disappeared. Except one. Clara kept the final page. Years later, she became one of Europe's greatest violinists. People traveled hundreds of miles to hear her play. But she never performed the Blood Opera. When asked about the mysterious composer who had changed her life, she always gave the same answer. He taught me that beautiful music should leave your soul free. She never told anyone about the vampire, never told anyone about Elena, never told anyone about the creature beneath the theater, and she never opened the final page until the night before she died. Clara was an old woman then. Her hands trembled. Her violin rested beside her bed. She opened the wooden box where she had kept the music for decades. The final page was still there, but the golden notes were gone. Only one sentence remained. The music ends when the memory returns. Clara smiled. Then she heard something. A violin. Very faint, coming from outside her window. She looked toward the moonlit street. A woman in a red dress stood beneath the trees. Elena. Young. Beautiful. Smiling. Clara opened the window. The woman raised one hand, then disappeared into the night. Clara closed her eyes and remembered everything. Her mother, her father, her brother, the theater, Lucien, Elena, the music, the fear, the love. Nothing had been stolen anymore. Everything belonged to her. Clara smiled. Then she whispered, "Thank you." The candle beside her went out, and the final page of the Blood Opera turned to dust. Across Vienna, somewhere in the darkness, a violin played one final note. Not frightening, not beautiful in the way Lucien's music had been. Just human. Then it stopped, and for the first time in centuries, there was no hunger waiting behind the music. No vampire, no curse, no stolen soul, only silence. The kind of silence that comes after a song has finally said everything it needed to say. And that was the true secret of the Blood Opera. The most powerful music in the world was never the music that made people obsessed. It was the music that helped them remember who they were. For 30 years, Clara believed the Blood Opera was finally gone. She was wrong. The first sign came on a rainy evening in Paris. Clara was 72 years old when a young composer arrived at her home carrying a black wooden box. He introduced himself as Gabriel Wehre. Clara stared at the name. Wehre? The young man nodded. My grandfather left this for you. Clara's heart stopped. Who was your grandfather? Gabriel opened the box. Inside was a single sheet of music, black paper, red ink. Clara stepped backward. No. Gabriel looked confused. Do you know what it is? Clara didn't answer. She knew. The Blood Opera. But there was something different. The final page was not the one she had destroyed. This one contained new music, music that had never existed before. At the bottom were 3 words. Act 6. Return. Clara whispered, Where did you get this? Gabriel answered, My grandfather found it beneath an old theater in Vienna. Clara's hands began trembling. Your grandfather. He said his name was Lucien. Silence. Clara looked toward the window. Rain covered the glass. Lucien Wehre had no children. Gabriel smiled. He didn't. Clara slowly understood. Then who are you? Gabriel opened his mouth, but before he could answer, the piano in Clara's room played a single note. Neither of them had touched it. Gabriel turned. Clara stared at the instrument. Another note, then another. A familiar melody. The Blood Opera. Gabriel looked frightened. What is happening? Clara closed her eyes. She knew the music had returned. Not because Lucien had returned, because something else had survived. The creature beneath the theater had been destroyed, but its first lesson had not. It had taught humanity something terrible. Memories could be harvested, love could be manipulated, and music could open doors inside the soul. Clara picked up the sheet. We have to burn this. Gabriel nodded. She walked toward the fireplace, then stopped. A woman's voice whispered from behind her. Don't. Clara turned. Elena stood in the doorway, exactly as she had appeared decades earlier. Young, beautiful, still wearing the red dress. Clara stared. You came back. Elena smiled. No. She pointed toward the music. I never left. The sheet began glowing. Elena continued. The creature is gone. Lucien is gone. But the opera, she looked at Clara, belongs to the world now. Clara's face fell. Then how do we destroy it? We don't. Elena stepped closer. We finish it. Gabriel stared. Finish what? Elena looked at him. The song that Lucien could never write. She turned toward Clara. The song that doesn't steal. The song that gives. Clara understood. She placed the music on the piano. Gabriel sat beside her. Elena stood behind them. Clara raised her violin. Ready? Gabriel nodded. They played. The melody began quietly. Then it grew. Not dark, not frightening. Warm. Human. Outside, people stopped in the streets. A woman remembered her mother. A man remembered his first love. A child remembered his father's laugh. Across Paris, people began crying. But this time, nothing was being taken. Everything was being returned. The music traveled farther, across Europe, across oceans, across cities, across generations. And somewhere far away, in a forgotten cemetery, a stone cracked. A name appeared on it. Lucien Wehre. Beneath the name were 5 words. He finally learned to let go. Clara smiled through her tears. The final note approached. She looked at Elena. Is this the end? Elena smiled. No. She looked toward the sunrise. It's freedom. Clara played the final note. The music stopped. The silence afterward was enormous. Gabriel lowered his hands. The sheet of music turned white. Then blank. Every note disappeared. Every word vanished. The Blood Opera was finally gone. Not destroyed. Completed. Clara looked toward Elena. but the doorway was empty. Only a faint scent of roses remained. Clara smiled. Then she closed the piano. She never played the melody again. Because she understood something at last. Some songs are meant to be heard. Some songs are meant to be remembered. And some songs are meant to disappear. Years later, Gabriel became a famous composer. But whenever someone asked him where his greatest melody came from, he always gave the same answer: from someone who taught me that love cannot be possessed. And nobody ever knew the full story. Nobody knew about the vampire composer. Nobody knew about the woman in the red dress. Nobody knew about the souls trapped inside glass bottles. Nobody knew about the creature beneath the theater. Only one thing remained. Every generation produced someone who heard the melody in a dream. A melody with no name. A melody that made them remember someone they had forgotten. And whenever they woke, they always felt strangely peaceful. Because the blood opera was no longer feeding, it was giving. And somewhere beyond the darkness, beyond memory, beyond death, Lucien Vere finally heard the last note. And this time, he did not hunger. He simply listened.